Hello! Happy Tuesday. We're going to do the clue review for Thursday's blind tasting mystery grape game. It's a classic grape from a well-known benchmark that definitely shows up on the sommelier exam, shows up on MW exams. Surprisingly, as far as I can tell, it hasn't shown up yet on any of the WSET diploma exams, Wines of the World. But just because it hasn't shown up yet doesn't mean it can't show up at the very next exam. So never rule it out, because this is definitely one of the distinctive grapes and regions of the world. And I'm talking about Carmenere from Chile. And it's also a really interesting grape to kind of work through in your head, thinking about some of the theory behind it. And we'll talk about that as we go through our clues. So here are the clues that I gave you on Thursday. Clue 1, blackberry. Clue 2, cassis, but particularly overripe, almost syrupy cassis, like we're making liqueur with that. So very ripe, dark fruit. Clue 3, black plum. So all dark fruit here. And so those of you that have been playing the mystery grape game for a while, you know that if you're seeing all dark fruit, you're thinking warmer climate here. And that fits Chile fairly well with that. Now, Chile is a very long, skinny country. And so they're obviously the areas that are really close to the coast are going to have some of the cooler oceanic influence. Those that are close to the mountains have the altitude, have the cooling influences there. But then right in the middle, in the valley area, that is a very warm area because it has shelter from the ocean influence, from the coastal mountains, and then it's not going up high enough in the altitude up towards the Andes to get the cooling influence there. So it's a nice warm pocket. And so there's a lot of really, really good value wine that is produced there. Chile is such a huge exporter. And I mean, on the exams, Chile shows up quite a bit for many different grape varieties. Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Viognier, Syrah, Pinot Noir, Merlot. So you will find a lot of wines from Chile that are made really well, all coming from that nice little warm pocket there. And so that's an area, again, you always want to be mindful of Chile and mindful of kind of that warming influence from grapes that are grown in that central valley there. Some of the more premium wines, of course, are going to be growing in more of the cool areas, like your more premium Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs, more in the coast, more your premium Cabs, Bordeaux blends, a little bit more up higher in the mountains. But think about that sweet spot there for the big, warm bulk wines. So, warm fruit. Clue number 4, eucalyptus, kind of leaves and seeds. Eucalyptus is definitely a note that a lot of people associate with Australia more, but there's eucalyptus trees everywhere, and they included in Chile. So that note can certainly pop up, and it's kind of wanted to get you guys thinking along the lines of some of those greener notes that could pop up. I wasn't willing to give you one of the big giveaway clues just yet with that first batch. That came a little later, but I wanted to start sneaking in some of those green notes for you to think about. Clue 5 was, well, for my personal tell, a lot of people just describe it as, coffee, like roasted coffee. For me, it's not quite roasted coffee like you think of roasted coffee beans. When I think of Carmenere, I think of my childhood and how much my parents drank Folgers, the classic roast. So, yeah, it's got a little smokiness, it's got a little sweetness to it with the vanilla. It's coffee, but it's not coffee. So this is my Carmenere tell in quite a bit cases. And it's usually Carmenere that's seen a little bit of oak. That's what introduces more of those coffee notes to it. And there's a lot of wines in Chile that will have some type of oak influence on there. And so, yeah, just takes me back as a kid. Yeah. And then clue 6, bitter chocolate. So chocolate, there's definitely chocolatey notes that could pop out again with the oak influence, but it's usually not a sweet chocolate. It's more, you think of like the baker's chocolate and the, high percent dark chocolate on there. A little bit of that kind of bitter edge to it. And then later on in clue 9, I gave the more giveaway clue of the green bell peppers for pyrazines, because there are quite a few examples of Carmenere from Chile that will have green bell peppers, jalapeno. One of the classic notes of a lot of the really oaked but yet really green Carmenere is chocolate-covered jalapenos. And how do we get to this? How do we get to a wine that has all of these ripe, dark fruit notes that we associate with warm climates, ripe fruit, and then also these green notes that we usually associate with cooler climates and less ripe fruit? So this is where we step back and kind of apply some of that theory knowledge. We think about all the warming influences there in Chile. Low latitude, like around 34 degrees latitude there. You're thinking like around like Rapel. So that's, if we flipped it over into the northern hemisphere, we're going through North Africa, we're going through Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, going through Los Angeles and California. So warm climate, lower latitude. And so that lower latitude also tells you more intense UV light on there. The closer you get to the equator, the more intense the UV is. So producers do want to combat that a little bit. And so often they will encourage more leafier canopies. And this is where we also apply our theory when we think about pyrazines. Pyrazines, they're in the skins of the grape. And what breaks them up to where you have a wine that's not as green is direct sunlight hitting those grape berries on there. So if you have a big leafy canopy that is shading it, protecting it from the high UV intensity, it's not getting as much as that sunlight penetration to it. It's still getting a lot of warmth. There's a lot of ambient warmth all around it. You also think of the soils in a lot of parts of Chile. They tend to be more the warmer soils. Gravel, alluvial rock, sand, things that are warmer soils. So, some heat can hit the soils, bounce back up to the berries and get them fully ripe. But yet it's still not getting that direct sunlight penetration to break up the pyrazines. And then historically also Chile was big on irrigation. So that would encourage even more leafier canopies, higher yields. And so higher yields can help you maintain some of those green notes on there because it's going to get ripe, but yet not fully ripe on there. And then also you think about harvest timing. Historically, a lot of people know that Carmenere used to be confused with Merlot, but Carmenere ripens a lot later than Merlot. So if it's harvested at the same time as Merlot, when it needs 2, 3, even 4 or 5 more weeks, that's going to maintain some of those green notes. Now we know the difference between Carmenere and Merlot, so that harvest confusion is not the same, but there's different harvest decisions that could go at play, especially when it comes to maintaining acidity and freshness. So you could have producers, especially when you think about some of those bulk wines, those $10 wines of Chilean Cabernet and Merlot and Chilean Carmenere that you find, they're not sourced from a single vineyard. They're sourced from several vineyards like that and all blended together. And so those vineyards could have different harvest times. You could have a vineyard that is harvested earlier to help maintain some acidity that you can then use and blend into your batch of fruit that is harvested much later with all that really ripe dark fruit. And yes, there'll be some green notes because a little bit of pyrazines goes a long way on it. But then you have that mix there of really ripe dark fruit, green notes. Same grape, just different batches blended together. So there is a lot of factors that involve that can kind of explain that paradox that we have. And from a blind tasting point of view, keeping that stuff in mind, it can seem kind of confusing because it's not just A plus B equals C, easy to follow along. But if you get a wine, like for me, many times I've had a Carmenere in front of me, and I'm thinking, okay, this is hitting some of my Cabernet Franc notes, like Loire Cabernet Franc, but it's too ripe for that. It's too ripe for the Loire on it. I mean, super warm vintage, maybe, climate change, maybe, but no, it's too warm. It's warm, and it's reminding me a little bit of like an Aussie Shiraz with some of that warm fruit, and especially if it gets some of that oak and it's giving me some of that coffee notes that I can often get in Syrah. That's then gives me my clue that I need to stop back and think, okay, what if you took a Loire Cab Franc and an Aussie Shiraz, and if they had a baby, you probably would have a Carmenere on it. And so just taking that step back can really help with solving that riddle that you have in the glass. The structure clues on that, I've been talking all about flavors, went off about structure clues. Dark ruby to medium purple, little inkier color. Medium to medium plus intensity. So not super intense, but it can get a little intense there. High coarse tannins. You'll definitely feel the tannins. That's that kind of that's that Bordeaux variety aspect of Carmenere. Carmenere is in the Bordeaux variety. So Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, you think of some of those bigger tannins, Carmenere takes after its cousins like that. Medium plus to full body. Medium to high alcohol, especially that longer hang time. If you're trying to get those tannins ripe, trying to get, a little bit of that less pyrazines, that's going to bump up that alcohol. Quality levels will be anywhere from the acceptable good value to some very good examples, and then inexpensive to premium price. And those were the structure and context clues. So with that, we have our Carmenere from Chile. Hope that helped you with a little bit of your blind tasting practice. I'm going to get going on today's game, which is going to be of the geeky variety. So see you guys in a bit. Take care.